A woman escapes years of emotional abuse and finally speaks her truth. In this deeply moving, true-to-life story, we follow Claire's journey from silence and survival to strength and self-redemption. This isn't just a family drama, it's a reminder that healing is possible. Even after being silenced for years, inspired by real events, told with care for those who need it most. Subscribe for more heartfelt stories that stay with you. If this touched you, please like, share, and comment below. Your story might help someone else feel less alone. Sometimes the most heartbreaking stories unfold behind closed doors in homes where no one is watching. This is the story of a woman who gave her love, her trust, and her silence, until silence nearly cost her everything. But when the truth finally spoke, it didn't whisper, it echoed. If you've ever stayed too long, waited too quietly, or wondered if anyone would believe you, this story is for you, based on real events, told with care, and maybe, just maybe, it will help someone else find their way out. You're watching The Letter I Never Sent, a journey of survival, truth, and finally, coming home to yourself. Hi, I'm Claire. He hit me, hard enough that the bruise beneath my eye turned purple within minutes. My parents saw it. They walked in through the front door just as I was pressing a damp towel to my face. They saw everything. My swollen cheek, my trembling hands, my silence. And then they turned away. They didn't ask. They didn't flinch. They went straight to the kitchen like they hadn't just walked through a war zone. Behind me, he chuckled from the armchair and said it loud enough for them to hear, "Polite little family you've got there, Claire." That night, I sat in the dark, bruised, silent, small. But I lit a candle anyway. And 30 minutes later, when the front door clicked again, I wasn't the one who stayed down. Before we begin, tell me, have you ever stayed silent just to keep the peace, only to realize it cost you everything? If you have, you're not alone. This is not a story about falling apart. It's a story about waking up. The knock had already happened, but it wasn't the knock that made me flinch. It was what came after. Nothing. I was still seated on the edge of the couch, a towel folded beneath my eye. It had soaked through hours ago. The bruise underneath wasn't even trying to hide anymore, but I hadn't cried. Crying gives pain a voice. Silence keeps it contained. At least that's what I told myself. The door opened with its usual creak. No knocking, no warning. My parents let themselves in, as they always did. The sound of grocery bags, the familiar scent of laundry detergent they'd used since I was a child. It all filled the space before their footsteps even reached the carpet. I didn't turn all the way, just slightly, enough for them to see. My mother stopped mid-step. Her hands trembled, still clutching the bag of apples and bread. My father's eyes narrowed, not in shock, but in calculation. He was measuring something. But I could never quite tell whether it was my pain or the inconvenience of witnessing it. No one said a word. Behind us, the television droned, a laugh track playing from a sitcom no one was watching. It felt wrong, like background music in a hospital waiting room. Then, like it was rehearsed, he walked out from the hallway, shirtless, half a beer in one hand, arrogance in the other. Colton leaned against the doorframe and grinned. Well, would you look at that? The polite little families back together. He didn't even try to pretend, didn't hide the smugness or the sense of ownership in his voice. My father nodded stiffly. My mother glanced at the countertop like she'd forgotten why she came. They walked into the kitchen, placed the grocery bags carefully, like they were arranging props for a photo shoot. No one looked at me again. No one looked at him either. And then they left, just like that. The door closed behind them. Soft. Not like a goodbye. More like an exhale. Colton belched and dropped into the recliner. The chair groaned under his weight. He propped his beer on his chest, closed his eyes, and drifted into the same kind of nap he always took after getting his way. I didn't look at him. I already knew what I'd see, the rise and fall of his stomach, the hint of a smirk, even in sleep, that look of smug satisfaction that used to make me feel small. My fingers touched the bruise, not to soothe it, but to remember it. Because the truth is, it hadn't started that night. It never does. 2 hours earlier, I had finally said it out loud. "Stop treating me like I'm something you bought on sale." He didn't even pause. He was standing by the fridge, halfway through a beer. He looked at me like I'd interrupted something mildly annoying. "You done?" That was his answer. "I'm serious," I said again. My voice didn't even rise. The slap came before I could finish my sentence. It was fast. My ear rang. My shoulder hit the edge of the counter. The wind left my lungs in one dry, startled gasp. I didn't even fall. Not all the way. But I stayed there a moment longer than I needed to. He stared at me, shook his head like I was the one overreacting. Then softly, "Babe, come on, you always push. You always gotta make it a thing." I don't remember nodding, but I know I didn't fight back. Not then. Back in the living room, he fell into the recliner like he'd just finished a chore. The beer bottle balanced on his chest, out of habit. The room smelled like stale hops, and the cologne he still thought worked. I went to the bathroom, slowly, wiped the blood from my lip with toilet paper. Didn't even flinch when it came back red. I looked at my reflection. Not broken, just tired. And then, for the first time in a long time, I said it out loud. I don't matter to him. I don't matter to them. And yet, I existed. I was still here, still breathing. That was the moment I picked up my phone, opened a message thread labeled only with the letter R, typed, "I'm ready." Then I deleted it. Then I typed it again. And this time, I hit send. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't need one. The message had been sent. After that, I just sat. Not because I didn't know what to do, but because I already knew what was coming. And I needed to sit with it. The sky outside had darkened. A breeze pushed through the old window pane, curling the curtains like someone was breathing just outside. Even the air felt like it was waiting. 30 minutes passed. The kind of 30 minutes where your thoughts sharpen, but your body feels like it's made of stone. Then, the click of the front door. Colton stirred, grunted, didn't open his eyes. I stood quietly, walked toward the door and opened it. There she was, Rachel. No coat, just a thick sweater and jeans. One black duffel bag in her left hand, a brown folder tucked beneath her arm. Her hair was pulled back tight. Her face, calm. But her eyes locked on mine like we'd been waiting for this moment our entire lives. She didn't smile, didn't ask questions. She just stepped inside. Her gaze shifted, first to me, then to the bruise, then without flinching to Colton, half asleep on the recliner behind me. I gave her a tiny nod. She set the bag down gently, the folder beside it. Still no words. I walked into the kitchen, my feet bare, the floor cool and creaking beneath me. I opened the drawer, pulled out a small black envelope, the kind you save for letters that don't need stamps. Colton mumbled something as I walked back into the room. His eyes cracked open just enough to see me place the envelope next to his beer. "What the hell is that?" he muttered. I looked at him, really looked. For the first time that day, I didn't look away. "Don't worry," I said quietly. "It's not poison." I paused. "But it might kill something else." He blinked, confused, reached for the envelope but missed. Didn't try again. I turned and walked down the hallway. The carpet muffled my steps. Rachel followed behind me, the duffel now slung over her shoulder. We entered the bedroom. I didn't slam the door, didn't even let it click shut. I eased it closed, like I was laying a baby down to sleep. Inside, the room smelled of lemon cleaner and something else. Something left over. Fear. Not mine. His. It had seeped into the walls, the kind of fear only cowards leave behind. Rachel placed the folder on the bed. Next to it, she laid out a rolled set of clothes, a brand new toothbrush, and a leather-bound notebook with tabs poking out. I caught my reflection in the mirror above the dresser. The swelling beneath my eye had deepened, spilling color across my cheekbone like old watercolor paint. I touched it again, not to check it, to remind myself, this happened. It was real. He had done this, and my parents had seen it, seen me, and still walked away. Rachel reached into the duffel and pulled out a voice recorder. Small, red, no bigger than a tube of lipstick. "Batteries are fresh," she said softly. Then she handed me the folder. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened it. Every page felt familiar, like reading someone else's diary, except it was mine. A notarized power of attorney giving me control over our joint accounts. Screenshots of Colton's gambling transfers, incident reports I had written but never submitted, from January, June, and just last week. And finally, at the back, a lease, a tiny one-bedroom apartment 12 miles away, signed in Rachel's name but for me. "I paid the first 2 months," she said quietly. "You don't owe me. I need you to know that." I didn't answer, didn't cry, just turned to the last page. Then closed the folder and laid it flat on the bed. 2 weeks ago, we sat in the public library pretending to browse cookbooks. Rachel whispered, "You don't need all this stuff to believe yourself, but the court will. His lawyer will." I had asked her why she was doing this, why she was helping. She looked at me like I had missed something obvious. "Because no one else is," she said. "Because I believe you, and because I'm not leaving you here to rot while they call it marriage." That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling and repeated her words. "I believe you," over and over, until they felt like my own. Back in the room, Rachel tapped her phone. "We have a window," she said. "After that, he'll start watching everything again, every message, every door." I nodded. "He's already lost control," I whispered. "He just doesn't know it yet." Rachel reached into the side pocket of the duffel and pulled out an old flip phone. No apps, no camera, just numbers and calls. She handed it to me. "If he finds this," she said, "he'll flip this house upside down." I held it in my hand. "Then we better move," I replied, "before the couch wakes up." The house was quiet. Too quiet, but not the peaceful kind. The kind that happens just before something breaks. From behind the bedroom door, we could hear the creak of the recliner, a shuffle of feet, the clink of glass on glass. Colton was moving. I opened the door slowly. Just a crack, just enough to listen. Silence. But I could feel the shift in the air, the tension crawling through the walls. I pictured him standing by the kitchen now, holding that envelope I'd left beside his beer, flipping through the papers, seeing Rachel's red ink circling every transaction, every withdrawal, every date, and at the bottom, my little yellow sticky note, scrawled in sharp black marker, "You'll want a lawyer, not a beer." Rachel looked at me, nodded toward the hallway. "Time," she whispered. We didn't make it 2 steps before we heard it. Footsteps, fast, heavy, coming straight towards the bedroom. But I didn't hide. I didn't wait for the knock. I opened the door myself, and there he was. Fist raised, caught mid-motion. He froze, startled, eyes wide, mouth half open like he was about to bark something cruel, but nothing came out. I lifted the phone in my hand, held it steady. "That envelope," I said calmly, "that's not the end. It's just the beginning." His pupils twitched. Confusion, then anger, then something else. Panic. He reached out, grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but firm. Enough to try and remind me he still could. But it wasn't fear I saw in him this time. It was something messier, something guilty. Before I could speak again, Rachel stepped forward. She held up her own phone, already recording. "Let go of her," she said, flat, cold, certain. "This is already live." Colton yanked his hand away like I'd burned him. He stumbled back a step, eyes bouncing between us, looking for something to stand on that no longer existed. I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't smile. Just took a breath and said, "Smile, Colton. You're finally on camera." He didn't respond, didn't yell, didn't run. He just stood there, like a system rebooting, like his brain had short-circuited. Then came the sound, not a punch, not a threat, but a scramble. A man trying to stomp out a fire that was already under his feet. "You set me up," he snapped, his voice cracking as it rose. "You dragged your little friend into our marriage like this is some kind of TV show. You're trying to ruin me." I didn't move. Rachel didn't flinch. He paced in place, circling like a trapped dog. "This is entrapment. You can't just film people like this." He jabbed a finger toward the kitchen. "You brought a witness into our home to bait me." I tilted my head. "I didn't bring a witness," I said softly. "I brought protection." That hit him somewhere he didn't expect. He staggered, then hissed, "I swear to God, Claire, I'll call the cops myself. Tell them you've lost it. You're unstable, violent." His voice was rising, slipping. "You hacked my email. You've been spying on me." I walked past him, slowly, picked up the manila envelope still sitting on the coffee table, opened it, pulled out a stapled packet. Medical records, financial statements, screenshots, photographs, and finally, a printed restraining order request. At the top, emergency petition, domestic safety concern. I held it out toward him, not like a weapon, like a receipt. "I already called them," I said. He froze. "You'll want to be ready when they knock. That's what they're walking into." He opened the packet. His eyes scanned fast, but his breath couldn't keep up. Inside were hospital notes, photos of bruises, a copy of the voicemail he left after drinking. "You're just here, Claire. You're nothing." Rachel stood at the edge of the hallway, still recording. She didn't blink. And Colton, he didn't speak. He just stared down at the paper, one hand at his side, the other tightening on the edge. For once, he was speechless, and in that silence, I breathed. A full breath, the kind I hadn't taken in years. 2 months earlier, I started writing everything down. Not because I was planning this, I wasn't. I just needed to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining it. A bruise behind my ear I didn't remember getting. I took a photo. The night I locked myself in the bathroom while he banged on the door, I wrote down every word he screamed. I sent it all to Rachel, not even knowing why. She replied, "Keep documenting. I believe you." Later, I had a nurse friend notarize my ER visit, the one where I claimed I slipped in the garage. She didn't ask questions, just hugged me a little longer than usual. I recorded voicemails, saved screenshots, built a folder, not because I thought it would change him, but because I needed proof of the person I used to be before I started disappearing. Back in the living room, Colton tried one more time. "You're obsessed," he said. "You're paranoid. I'll tell everyone." I didn't answer. Instead, I turned on the voice recorder app, pressed play. His voice filled the room. "You're so stupid, it hurts. You're nothing but a burden." He flinched. Rachel didn't move. And that silence, that long, heavy, echoing silence, was louder than any slap he'd ever given me. Red and blue lights flickered through the blinds. Colton spun toward the window. "You didn't," he said, voice cracking. "You actually called them?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I walked slowly toward the front door. My hand found the knob. I paused. Then I said, almost kindly, "Let's see if you still smirk in a mugshot." The knock wasn't loud, but Colton's voice behind me shattered like glass. "She's setting me up. She's got her friend hiding in the kitchen with a camera." When the 2 officers stepped into view, flashlights sweeping the hallway, Colton was already backpedaling toward the stairs, hands raised like a man auditioning for innocence. "She ambushed me," he stammered. "She's unstable. She's been acting strange for weeks." I stepped aside, gestured toward the kitchen table. Every folder, tabbed, dated, signed, was laid out neatly. Rachel handed over the USB with a soft click. "You'll want to start with the timeline," I said. One officer, younger, sharp haircut, alert eyes, opened the top file. The other, a woman about my mother's age, glanced between Rachel and me. She looked tired, but she didn't look away. "You did all this yourself?" she asked. I nodded. "Yes, ma'am." The younger officer let out a low whistle as he scrolled through the USB. "These are time-stamped?" "And notarized," I added. Colton, still half-shadowed by the stairwell, scoffed. "This is insane," he muttered. "She's staging an entire production." They asked him to sit. He didn't move, so the younger officer unclipped his radio, murmured something low and coded. Colton's shoulders dropped. He sat. By the time the sun crept over the tree line behind our house, we were in separate cruisers. I rode with the older officer. Her name tag read, Brenly. The leather in the back seat was cold through my jeans, but I didn't shiver. At the station, Rachel and I were separated. She gave me a quiet look. Not fear, not sympathy, just presence. They led me into a pale green interview room with no windows, just a table, 2 chairs, and a camera humming softly in the corner. Officer Brenly returned alone, closed the door gently behind her. "You know," she said, pulling out a notepad, "it's rare to see someone this prepared." I didn't smile. "I didn't prepare to fight," I said. "I prepared to be believed." She nodded slowly, looked me in the eye like she was deciding who I really was. Then we began. She asked questions. I answered without flinching. I'd already cried in every room of that house. I had no tears left for this one. Across the hallway, I could hear Colton's voice, loud, indignant, familiar. When Officer Brenly stepped out for a moment, a man in a gray suit entered the room across from mine, Colton's lawyer. He arrived too quickly, which meant one thing: he was on standby. Probably sent by Colton's father, a retired judge in Forsyth County. The shift was immediate. When Brenly returned, her tone had cooled. The questions grew sharper. Less about what happened, more about why I hadn't reported it sooner. "So," she said, tapping her pen on the affidavit, "you didn't go to the police until today. Why now?" I didn't blink, didn't shift. I reached into the folder and pulled out one last page, a letter, signed by my therapist, dated 6 months earlier. In it, she had documented the risk of escalation, specifically naming Colton. She recommended that I take legal protection measures immediately if the situation worsened. Brenly read it once, then again. Still, she asked the question I'd feared most. "You're not just trying to get ahead in a divorce, are you? Property split, custody leverage?" For a second, my hands trembled. Then I folded them tight in my lap. I knew what I looked like. Too calm, too dry-eyed, spine too straight to look broken. And I answered plainly, if I'd waited for things to get worse, they'd blame me for not coming sooner. If I come now, they say I'm calculating. So I prepared, because I knew no one would hand me the benefit of the doubt. She didn't respond, just scribbled something down in her notebook. My mind drifted, just for a moment, back to a night 3 months ago. I'd been sitting in my therapist's office. Soft lights. Safe walls. Outside, the world had felt colder than bone. I remember whispering, if I leave and no one helps and he kills me anyway, will they say I was crazy for staying? She had put her pen down, met my eyes, and said quietly, then don't leave in a way they can forget. That's the night I started planning, not to punish Colton, not to ruin him, but to live. Back in the station, Officer Brenly rose from her seat. "I'll be back shortly," she said. I waited. The ticking wall clock was the only sound in the room. When she returned, she exhaled one long, tired breath. "We're holding him for 24 hours, she said. "After that, things get more complicated." I nodded. She handed me the restraining order forms. I signed without hesitation. No relief, no ceremony, just steps, one after another. Outside, the sky had turned pale gray blue. The morning air bit at my skin, but I didn't shiver. Rachel met me at the bottom of the steps. Her eyes searched mine. Did they listen? I nodded, then whispered to myself, that was the easy part, because the hard part was still waiting. The car ride back was quiet, but not the kind of silence you get after a long day. This silence had weight, like the air between us was holding its breath too. Rachel drove, hands steady on the wheel, eyes on the road. She didn't ask questions. She knew this part wasn't about paperwork or police reports. It was about something deeper. We pulled up outside the modest apartment I'd rented in secret. 2 rooms, beige walls, nothing on the shelves yet. It wasn't home, but it was mine. Inside, I kicked off my shoes. The floor was cold. Everything smelled faintly of bleach and new beginnings. Rachel helped me bring in the last of the bags. She moved slowly, not out of caution, but care. She unfolded the spare blanket on the worn-out couch. "You want me to stay?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, I need to do this one thing alone." She didn't argue, just nodded like she understood exactly what I meant. Maybe she did. Maybe she knew some battles required solitude. After she left, I stood in the center of the room, hands awkward, body unsure of what to do now that it wasn't defending itself. I sat at the little kitchen table, the kind with plastic peeling at the corners. I reached for my phone. It was still saved under the same name. Mom. Not Janice, not Mother, just Mom. I tapped it. It rang. My heart didn't race the way it used to, not like when I was a kid in trouble. Not like when Colton raised his voice. It didn't pound, it just ached. She answered. "Claire?" Her voice was careful. Not warm, not worried, just level. "I just wanted you to know," I said. "He's been arrested." Pause, a beat too long. "For what?" I swallowed. "For what he's done to me." She didn't say anything. I kept going, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. The bruises, the hospital visits, the money he took, the screaming. I thought maybe you saw something. I thought maybe you'd come back. Another long pause. Then she said, "Marriage isn't perfect, Claire, but airing your dirty laundry like this, we raised you stronger than that." My fingers curled tight around the edge of the table. That was it. That was her answer. No outrage, no softness, just that old brittle pride wrapped in silence. I didn't cry, didn't shout. I just paused. Because in that moment, I realized something. I had been carrying the wrong hope. All this time, I thought maybe, just maybe, she would come through. That one day she'd say, "I'm sorry I didn't protect you." But she didn't. And maybe she never would. I set the phone down, didn't hang up, just let it sit there on the table, her voice fading into nothing. I reached for the journal Rachel had given me months ago, back when she first noticed the quiet in my eyes. I opened it and wrote slowly. "Today, I buried the last illusion. I don't need her to understand. I just need to stop needing her." I closed the journal. Across the room, I spotted the envelope, the one I had carried into the police station, thick with evidence. I pulled a clean folder from the drawer, slid the envelope inside. On the front, I wrote one word with a black marker: closure. The sun was sinking now. Shadows stretched across the carpet, long and soft. I made tea, not to drink, just to hold something warm. I sat on the couch. My body still remembered where every bruise had been, but I didn't flinch, and that's when the knock came. Not loud, just 2 sharp taps. I stood, opened the door. Rachel. Her face was pale, not from fear, from disbelief. "You need to see this," she said. She brushed past me, grabbed the remote, and turned on the tiny TV mounted above the counter. A local news broadcast. There he was, Colton, standing outside the courthouse. Button-down shirt, not even wrinkled, hair combed, face calm. His lawyer stood beside him, nodding like a metronome. Colton looked into the camera and said, "I never meant to hurt anyone. My wife. She's struggling emotionally. It's been a hard time. I just want her to get the help she needs." "Help?" Rachel muttered. I didn't blink. I didn't shake. I just watched. He smiled for the camera, that familiar, careful public smile, and something inside me stopped shaking. I walked back to the table, opened my laptop, sat down. Rachel tilted her head. "What are you—" But I didn't answer. I opened a blank document, and I started typing. Not to the police, not to the judge, to someone with power, someone with a voice louder than his. I typed, "Dear Elisa, I don't know if you'll believe me, but I'm going to give you every reason to." Then I attached everything. The screenshots, the bank withdrawals, the audio files, the photos, the incident reports, my full name, the timeline, and one final sentence. If I disappear, this is my voice. Publish it anyway. I hit send. Then I closed the laptop, and for the first time that day, I exhaled. The apartment was still. No traffic sounds, no buzzing appliances, just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breathing. Steady for once. I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat at the kitchen counter sipping cold coffee from a chipped mug, watching the inbox on my laptop. An hour passed, then another. At 3:12 a.m. it arrived. Subject, Ristori submission. From Elisa Carrington Body. This will not be buried. I'll call you in an hour. I let out a breath, not relief, not triumph, just the slow, tired release of something that had been holding me hostage for years. 45 minutes later, the Zoom link appeared. I clicked. Her face came into view. Sharp eyes, no makeup, no small talk. Elisa looked like a woman who hadn't slept in 2 days and wouldn't until this story was told. "Claire," she said, "thank you for trusting me." "I wasn't sure I should," I replied, honest. "Good," she nodded. "You shouldn't trust easy, but you trusted smart." We talked for hours. She cross-checked every document, every timestamp, every voice file. She didn't flinch, didn't sugarcoat, didn't promise me a win. She just listened. It didn't feel like an interview. It felt like handing off a torch, a life too heavy to carry alone. But then, just as I thought the conversation was ending, she said, "You're not the only one." I blinked. "What?" "There's another woman," Elisa continued. "Different state, same man, different name, but same pattern. I'll connect you if you want." My stomach dropped. He'd done this before. To someone else. To someone like me. Another woman had whispered her truth into silence. And now we were both surfacing, gasping, maybe finally being heard. I nodded slowly. "Yes, please." The call ended. She promised to publish by Monday morning. I closed my laptop, exhaled once, then set it aside. My burner phone buzzed. A single message lit the screen. "You've made a mistake. Fix it or I will." No name, no number. But I didn't need one. I stared at the screen, then whispered to no one. No, I just finally corrected one. I didn't delete the message. I didn't answer it either. I left the phone on the counter, and walked away. By Sunday morning, I wasn't hiding. I was preparing. I zipped up my jacket and headed out the door. The chill bit through my sleeves, but I didn't turn back. The old community center off Mason Street still smelled like chalk dust and burnt coffee. AA meetings used the space at night. Flyers lined the walls. Self-defense workshops. Grief groups. Immigration support circles. I found the room Elisa had reserved. Inside, 3 folding chairs faced one another. 2 women looked up when I entered. Dana, Alana, older than me by a few years. But their faces looked like mine. Tired in a way makeup couldn't cover. We didn't greet each other like survivors. We greeted each other like strategists. Elisa had brought us together. We sat, not to share war stories, to share proof. Dana opened first. "Financial manipulation," she said, voice steady. "He forged my signature, rerouted business accounts, left me owing thousands to the IRS. Alana spoke next. He isolated me. No credit in my name. No ID that didn't say his. When I finally pressed charges, they said I didn't seem scared enough. The first time. The second time, she added. The DA dropped it. Said it might disrupt the kid's sense of family stability. I leaned forward. What we have now, it's not just stories. Alana nodded. It's receipts. We laid it all out. Thumb drives, police reports, medical bills and screenshots, photos, audio files. Rachel had set up a secure shared drive for us, under a decoy name. We uploaded everything. Every time the system had looked away, we saved the moment. That afternoon, we launched something small but unshakable, a single-page website, 3 names, 3 testimonies, and 1 headline. We are not asking for justice. We are showing you the proof you refuse to see. That night, I returned home, made pasta, picked up 2 lemon bars from the corner market. Not because I liked them, because they were my mother's favorite. Maybe I just wanted to remember someone used to care, or maybe I was preparing for the kind of closure that doesn't happen in courtrooms. At the kitchen table, I refreshed the news site. The headline was sitting in the review folder. The hands behind the silence, 3 women, 1 man, and the system that let him roam. I stared at it. The words felt sacred and dangerous, all at once. I placed my palm flat on the table to ground myself. The other reached instinctively for my cheek, where the bruise used to be. Faded now, yellowed like old fruit. I whispered, "You're not the shame anymore." Then, without meaning to. I checked Instagram, and there it was, Colton's post, a photo from our wedding day. I was in lace. He was in navy. The caption read, "No one knew her like I did." I didn't flinch, didn't blink. He was baiting me, playing to his audience, the friends, co-workers, church ladies who still thought he was one of the good ones. He wanted a reaction. I gave him something better. I posted a photo of my hospital wristband. No caption, just the truth. The date on it was 1 year before our wedding. It was from the night I was admitted after falling down the stairs. Colton had driven me, told the nurse I was clumsy. I posted the image, plain, ugly, undeniable. Then I logged out. I made dinner, didn't taste it, didn't need to. I was no longer hungry for validation. I was fed by something else now, truth. And that night, before I went to bed, I walked the apartment, checked the locks, twice. Then I lit a candle. Not for fear, for something I had forgotten I deserved. Peace. Monday morning came quietly. No sirens, no fireworks, just a sunrise the same as any other, pale, soft, and slow. But something was different. At 7:02 a.m., the article went live. By 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a call from Colton's attorney, and by 9:15, another alert followed, this time from his firm. Termination review initiated, confidentiality lifted, public statement forthcoming. I stared at the screen. No emotion rose to meet it, no surge of victory, no tears, just quiet. A kind of quiet I hadn't felt in years. Not silence, that was survival. This was stillness. I didn't forward the email, didn't post it, didn't text Rachel. I just exhaled, the softest sound I'd made all morning. But it carried the most weight. I spent the rest of the day doing ordinary things, folded laundry, fed the cat, wiped the dust from the windowsill. I checked my phone, not constantly, just enough. Enough to feel the digital tide begin to rise. Comments were flooding in beneath the article, some praising Elisa, some sharing their own stories. But it was the private messages that hit the hardest. One was from a name I didn't recognize. Camille, she wrote. I read the article. I was one of his patients. Thank you for not staying quiet. I sat down, not from weakness, but because something inside me had shifted. The tremble in my knees wasn't fear, it was release. By noon, another call came in. A new number, a woman's voice. Calm, measured. My name's Taryn Everett. I'm with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. I wanted to let you know we're reopening your case. I didn't answer right away. The words didn't land properly, like my brain had no folder to store them. She continued gently. There were procedural barriers, but now, with what's surfaced publicly, particularly the audio, those barriers no longer apply. I could have asked 100 questions, could have demanded to know why it took an article, a storm of strangers, for the system to care, but I didn't. Instead, I said softly, "Thank you for catching up." And she understood exactly what I meant. We scheduled my formal statement for Thursday. After I hung up, I found myself walking, not pacing, but with purpose, into the bedroom. I opened the closet door. It creaked the same way it always had. I stepped inside. I remembered doing this months ago, hiding behind coats, phone pressed to my chest, whispering into the dark. I'm recording this just in case. That audio clip, it was now embedded in Elisa's article. It was now in the official case file, and it was now echoing through a system that had once ignored me. My phone buzzed again. I walked back to the kitchen and checked it. It wasn't another message of support. It wasn't a friend or a stranger. It was Colton. He'd uploaded a video. No edits, no music, just his face, eyes red, hair disheveled, voice shaking. "They're painting me like a monster," he said. "She's making me out to be some kind of abuser. I loved her, I still do, but this is cruel. She's not the woman you think she is. She's vengeful." I watched in silence. Not because I was shocked, but because, for the first time, I could see the performance, that fragile tone. The cracks in his voice I once mistook for regret now just looked like someone scrambling to reapply a mask that had already hit the floor. Below his video, the comments were split at first. Then one stood out and kept rising. A woman replied, "She didn't break the silence. She survived it. That's louder." It was shared over 30,000 times before the hour was up. I closed the video, set the phone down, and that's when the next notification arrived, a legal one. Protective order expanded. Defendant is required to surrender all registered firearms by 10 p.m. tonight. I read it twice. Then again. The timestamp matched the motion filed. He'd been served. I leaned back in my chair, watched a thin beam of light stretch across the kitchen floor. My tea was cold. My cat curled into the same sunlit patch he always claimed. And for the first time in what felt like forever, the air around me felt still. I said it out loud to no one in particular. We're not done, but now we're not invisible either. There was no anger in my voice, no vengeance, just truth. And truth, when it finally has space to exist, doesn't need to scream. That night, I lit a candle. Not for grief, but for something I had almost forgotten how to hold. Hope. The courthouse steps were colder than I remembered. Gray stone, scraped with time. The kind of place built to feel larger than people, but we didn't feel small today. Rachel stood on my left, Alana and Dana on my right. 3 other women had joined us now, faces I'd only known through email threads and shared scars. We weren't a protest, we weren't a headline. We were a reminder, and we were standing in the open. I clutched the folder in my hands, not for safety anymore, but for history. Inside, my final statement. Copies of the formal restraining order. A single photo tucked between 2 pages. It was a picture of me in the hospital, not the one I posted online. This one was different. I wasn't bruised in it. I was smiling. It had been taken 2 days before the wedding. A nurse snapped it while we joked about bouquet flowers. She didn't know what was coming. Neither did I. That's the photo I brought with me today. To remind myself that she existed, that she was real, and that she deserved better. The courtroom was nearly empty. No cameras, no press, just benches, oak and fluorescent lights. Colton was there. Hair combed, tie stiff. He didn't look at me. He looked past me, like I was just a stage prop in his performance. But the judge didn't look away. She read every word of my statement aloud, every line, every documented date, every voice memo, every hospital visit. And when she reached the part where I'd written, "I do not want vengeance, I want safety," she paused, looked straight at me and said, "Thank you for surviving long enough to speak." Outside, we walked slowly. Not because we were tired, because we weren't rushing anymore. No one was following us, no one waiting to yank the curtain closed, just wind and breath and space. Rachel slipped her arm around mine. "You know," she said, "you could write this all down, not for the court, for you." I smiled. Maybe I already have. Dana let out a soft laugh. "You think they'll ever get used to this?" she asked. "Used to what?" I said. "Us," she whispered, standing, not flinching. We reached the bottom step and paused. Photographers had started gathering across the street. Not paparazzi, not scandal chasers, just truth chasers. A young journalist, maybe 23, ponytail too tight, stepped forward holding her mic. "Ms. Carter," she asked, "do you have anything to say to other women watching this unfold?" I looked at her, really looked. Behind her, I saw a mother pushing a stroller, 2 teenage girls waiting at the crosswalk. I took a breath, and I said, "Tell the truth, even if you whisper it, even if no one listens at first, because the silence doesn't protect you, it just protects them." She nodded, not just as a reporter, as someone who needed to hear it. We walked to the edge of the block. The others turned left, but I stopped. Rachel paused beside me. "You okay?" "I want to walk home," I said. She blinked. "All the way?" "All the way." She didn't argue, didn't insist on driving, just handed me a granola bar from her purse. "Text when you get there," she said. "I will." And then I walked, block by block, light post by light post, through intersections I used to drive through crying, past coffee shops I once avoided because I might see someone who'd ask too many questions. I walked past the florist where I picked up my wedding bouquet, the pharmacy where I bought makeup to hide bruises, the gas station where I once locked myself in the bathroom and sobbed so hard the cashier knocked on the door. All of it. I walked through all of it. And with every step, I whispered names to myself. Not his, mine. The names of the women who never got to leave, the ones who stayed too long, the ones who weren't believed, the ones who were, and my own name. Soft at first, then stronger. Claire. Again. Claire. Because this body, this life, it belongs to me now. I reached the apartment just as the sky turned orange. My feet ached, my lungs were tight. But I smiled. Inside, the cat greeted me like nothing had changed, but everything had. I fed him, poured water, lit the same candle from the night before. Then I sat, and I wrote. Not to Colton, not to the judge, not to my mother, to myself. Dear Claire, you made it. Not just through the house, not just through the courts, through the fear, through the silence, through the worst kind of forgetting, the one where you forget yourself. And now, you are home. Not because the locks are different, not because your name is on the lease, but because you finally speak in a voice that belongs only to you. Welcome back. Welcome forward. With love. The version of you that never stopped believing you were real. There's a letter tucked into the back of my journal. It's been there for weeks. Written late one night when the memories wouldn't settle. Folded 3 times, addressed, stamped, never mailed. I wrote it to my mother, but in truth, it could have been to anyone who stood in the doorway and watched me drown with dry eyes. It begins simply. Dear Mom, you asked me once, without asking, why I didn't just leave, why I made a mess of something that could have been handled privately, why I told strangers what you believed should stay inside the family walls. You didn't ask if I was scared. You didn't ask if I was hurt. You asked if I was sure. Let me tell you something. With all the softness I still have left, I was never unsure of the pain. What I doubted was whether anyone would care. When I was little, you told me not to talk back, not to overreact, not to make things worse. So I didn't. For years, I didn't. Even when I wanted to scream. Even when I wanted to throw a chair through a window just to see if anyone would notice the sound. But here's the truth. Silence doesn't make things better. It just makes pain quieter for everyone else, and louder for the one living in it. You loved Colton, maybe not for who he was, but for what he looked like from the outside, the job, the charm, the way he shook Dad's hand and remembered your favorite pie. He made you feel seen. I get it. I do. But he made me disappear, and you never asked why. I don't need your apology anymore. Not because I don't deserve it, but because I've stopped needing it to breathe. I forgave you quietly while cleaning blood from the bathroom mirror, while folding the same laundry you helped me carry into that house, while staring at bruises and pretending they were just shadows. I forgave you because I didn't want your silence to follow me into freedom. And because the truth is, you couldn't speak for me. You were too busy pretending you hadn't once silenced yourself. There are things I'll never say out loud again. Not because they don't matter, but because I've already said them enough times in rooms that chose not to hear. But I will say this, and only once. I survived. Not because of you, not because of him, not because I got lucky, but because somewhere, deep inside the parts of me you forgot to protect, something refused to go quiet. And now, that voice is mine. So no, I won't be mailing this letter, not because I'm afraid, but because the person I needed to hear it finally did. Me. I folded the letter, placed it in the same drawer where I keep my first therapist's business card, my court documents, the apartment lease, and a photo of me laughing with Rachel over burnt toast the day I moved in. That drawer isn't a time capsule. It's a ledger, proof of survival. Evidence of becoming. Later that night, I did something small. I changed the contact name in my phone, from Mom to Janice, not to be cruel, but to finally make peace with who she is, and who I no longer need her to be. Then I did something else. I lit one last candle, took a deep breath, and wrote a new note, just 3 lines. I was there, I was real, and I made it out. I taped it to the bathroom mirror. So every morning when I look at myself, I don't just see skin or scars or what's left. I see someone who stayed with herself. And in that, I found the kind of healing no courtroom could grant, no apology could offer. Just me, alive, unapologetically real. No one walks away from pain untouched. But sometimes, walking away is the bravest thing you'll ever do. Claire's story isn't just about justice. It's about reclaiming a voice she was told didn't matter. And maybe that's the message we all need, that even after the silence, there's still time to speak. If this story moved you, share it. Someone you love may need it more than you know. And to anyone still in the dark, you are not alone. And your voice, it still matters.